Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the last verse that was lectured on was Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 6, verse 35. So we will be reading 36 and 37. Asamyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me mati vyas atma tu yatata sakyo vaptum upayataha samyata unbridled atmana by the mind yoga self-realization dushprapa difficult to obtain iti thus me my mati opinion vyasya controlled atmana by the mind to but yatata while endeavoring shakya practical avaptum to achieve upayataha by appropriate means. The verse. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind, listen carefully because I'm going to test you on this afterwards. Yes, declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement can hardly achieve success in self-realization. That will be on the test. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Such a show of yoga may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. A Krishna conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without separate endeavor, but a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna conscious. So I'll just read the next verse in the words. Arjuna uvacha ayati shradaya shradayo peto yachach chalita manasaha aparapya yoga samsiddhim gam gatim Krishna gachati. Arjuna uvacha, Arjuna said, ayati, the unsuccessful transcendentalist, shradaya, with faith, upati, engaged, yogat, from the mystical link, chalita, deviated, manasa, who has such a mind, aprapya, failing to obtain, yoga samsiddhim, the highest perfection in mysticism. Kam, which, Gatim, destination, Krishna, O Krishna, Gachati, achieves. Translation. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist, who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness, and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The path of self-realization, or mysticism, is described in the Bhagavad-Gita. The basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living entity is not this material body. That'll be on the test too. But that he is different from it, and that his happiness is in eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. These are transcendental beyond both body and mind. Self-realization is sought by the path of knowledge, by the practice of the eightfold system. We have three here, right? The path of knowledge, the practice of the eightfold yoga system, or by bhakti-yoga. In each of these processes, one has to realize the constitutional position of the living entity, his relationship with God, and the activities whereby he can reestablish the lost link and achieved the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. Following any of the above mentioned three methods, one is sure to reach a supreme goal sooner or later. This was asserted by the Lord in the second chapter. Even a little endeavor on the transcendental paths offers a great hope for deliverance. Out of these three methods, the path of bhakti-yoga is especially suitable for this age, because it is the most direct method of God realization. To be doubly assured, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna to confirm his former statement. One may sincerely accept the path of self-realization, but the process of cultivation of knowledge and the practice of the eightfold yoga system are generally very difficult for this age. Therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail for many reasons. First of all, one may not be sufficiently serious about following the process. To pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on the illusory energy. Consequently, whenever a person tries to escape the clutches of the illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. A conditioned soul is already allured by the modes of material energy, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental disciplines. This is called yogat chalita manasaha, deviation from the transcendental path. Arjuna is inquisitive to know the results of deviation from the path of self-realization. Deviation. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist, who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness, and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? So before this verse, Arjuna asked the question. He says the mind is very difficult to control. It seems impossible to control. It's more difficult to control than the raging wind. And Krishna says it's possible by constant practice and detachment. So what's the thing to remember? That is what? Possible. By what? Constant practice and detachment. Not just by wishing it so. Put it up on the wall, I am a devotee, and by constant practice and detachment. So, in this verse 36, it says, for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. So how do we keep the mind from being unbridled? in a very simple term. What? Go to even a more simple term here. Those are some of the things we do, but what are those things? What are they meant to do?
Remember Krishna.
Yes, those are ways to accomplish what I'm saying. He says, for the mind who is unbridled, self-realization is difficult. So, how do we keep the mind from being unbridled? What? No, go back to just the words we're using. Those are some methods to accomplish what I'm saying. But just go back to the simple terms. If you want to keep the horse from being unbridled, how do you keep it from being unbridled? You bridle it. Very simple point. You keep it bridled. So we remember that all these processes may be different ways we do it. We do 9 processes of devotional service. Anybody know one of them? Shravanam. And not Nindanam? Speculatanam? Pajalpanam? Procrastinam? That means where we do it later. Yes? Are those processes? Are those processes? Yes, they are, but not of devotional service. So that is the simple thing. To make sure that the mind is not unbridled, we keep it bridled. I remember this, a friend of mine gave me a horse to ride on. His family owned a ranch out in the country, and they had horses. So he said, you ride this horse. So I was riding the horse, and it was trying to buck me off and run me into the tree. So I got off it, and I let the bridle go for 1 second, and it ran away. And it's funny, at dinner time, his sister said, did you guys ride horses? I said, yes. She said, which horse did you ride? When I told her which one, she said, that horse was captured wild yesterday. Nobody was supposed to ride that horse. And her brother's like chuckling. He put me on a wild horse that had been like in captivity for 1 day, right? So, of course, it was difficult to control. But would it be possible? By what? Bridling it. And the constant practice and detachment. We pull it back under the control of the self. We learned this earlier. I think it was verse 26 that it says, from wherever the mind wanders, one should pull it back under the control of the self. Now, if we're going to pull it back, what does it have to still be? Begins with a B? Bridle. It's still, so we tried to keep that bridle on. It's like a horse. We saw the horses there bringing them yesterday in the procession. They keep them from veering off. They don't let them veer off and then try to get them back later. They try to keep them on course. So, this is what we work on, to keep the mind on course. Because otherwise, if the mind is unbridled, self-realization is easy or difficult? Difficult. Do we like difficulties? No. We must, because we put ourselves into difficulties. And then we do the same thing that caused us a difficulty, and it causes a difficulty again, and we're surprised. They say this is insanity, to do the same thing but expect a different result. So, this is the first principle here, is that we have to control the mind. And what do we strive by? What kind of means? Appropriate or speculative? Appropriate. And then is there a chance that there's success? And it's someone's opinion that this success will be assured. Whose opinion is that? What's the difference between Krishna's opinion and fact? What? Same, yes. But he's stating it's his opinion because he can make it a fact that we should try it. Because we each have our own opinions, but his opinion is greater. So, why is it that people do not detach their mind from material engagement? What don't they accept? You were saying it earlier. What? Proper treatment, right? We're given proper treatment by the spiritual master of what to do. But it's just like, it's funny, if they prescribe a medicine to 100 people, and 90 of the people take it and get cured, and the other 10 don't take it, then what is the success rate? 90%. Even though the other people didn't take it, it might actually be 100, but you have to count it that way. So when we count the success of Krishna consciousness, if someone didn't take the proper treatment, they won't get the result. It should be simple in that way, that we have to take this proper treatment if we want to be cured. If the physician gives you the proper medicine, but you won't take it, will it cure you? But is the medicine capable of curing you? It is, but if you don't take it, then it won't help you out. So moving along here to more of this. So if we're practicing yoga and engaging in material enjoyment, there's an analogy here. What is it like doing?
Pour water on fire.
And how well does that work? It works real well if you're trying to put out the fire, right? Correct? But if the purpose is to get a fire, then it maybe isn't a good idea. So we have to understand what our purpose is. You have to understand to be fixed in purpose. Because as they say, we need to know what our goal is to know where we're going. Because they say if you don't know where you're going, it's difficult to get there. So we have to be fixed in this goal of how to do this. So how do we control the mind? Engaging it in the transcendental service of Krishna. And we already mentioned the 9 processes that we use. And he easily achieves the result. But there's several other practices. What are the other practices that people use? Yes, path of knowledge. And what's the other one? Ashtanga yoga, yes. And what's the third one? Bhakti-yoga. So why don't we practice the other ones? It's troublesome. But if you apply yourself well, it's better to apply yourself to the Ashtanga yoga than just talk about Bhakti yoga is better but not do it. Because if you don't do it, does it matter? Which one's better? Right? The one you do. Now, of course, the Bhakti may be better, but what we need to do is practice that and realize that we're given a chance. You know, if I give you 3 ways to do something, a very hard way, a medium hard, and an easy way, which do you pick? The easy way, right? So that's what Krishna is giving us here. Now, why is it the easier way? Because we please Krishna, and Krishna helps us. That's the difference, is that when we engage in a relationship with Krishna, Krishna takes care of everything. So what is the basic principle of self-realization? Right, to understand we're the soul, not the body. And in many religions, they're confused with this. That's why they say, you know, the religion of the Vedas, what is it really called? Sanatan Dharma. Because Sanatan means eternal, right? And Dharma means function. Or is it Hinduism? Did you find the page where it says Hinduism? There is a page where it says Hinduism. But it's in the Muslim teachings that the Hindus are the people who live by the Indus River. So the Indus River is in Pakistan now. So that means a Hindu is someone who lives in Pakistan. Is that it? It might be. It could just as easily be because it's somebody who lives by the Indus River, and now it's in Pakistan, so it means someone who's in Pakistan. But it's funny the terms that people get. What religion was Jesus Christ? What is it? Jewish. He wasn't Christian, right? So they picked up the term that the other people called them. The Mughals called them Hindus, and now people still say that they're Hindu. But was it mentioned in any of the verses here in Bhagavad-Gita? Even in the 19th chapter? No? Then why do so many people think they're Hindus? But in one sense, we don't argue with them because it's better to tell them Hindu culture, which is there, means to engage in service. Hindu culture is actually to practice Sanatana Dharma, but it's kind of a vague term. It's like saying, oh, we're going to play that sport. That's like Hinduism. And saying it's cricket, it's an exact sport, or football, or baseball, is saying exactly what it is. So Sanatana Dharma means we need to understand our eternal function. Now, in some other religions, they do some inconsistent ideas, because we need to know the difference between matter and spirit, or on the small level, body and soul. Muslims, Christians, and Jews, they bury the body because later on that body gets resurrected. Therefore, it's better to die young. Someone less have made a story says, live fast, die young, and leave a beautiful body behind. That's not a good philosophy to follow, is it? But if you're thinking you're going to get resurrected in this body, then it is better to die young. So we need to understand what the eternal function is. Now we see here that this is the point to keeping the mind bridled and understanding the suitable practice, and understanding that the beginning of spiritual life is to understand the difference between the body and the soul. We're given different paths. We're realizing here that with a little endeavor on the path, that's why I was speaking with one girl and she's saying, well, you can't save all the people. And I said, well, we take some people who are very degraded and make them into devotees. And if somebody, there's different degrees of success. Because for some people, say they are eating meat, drinking alcohol, having sex with whoever they can, and cheating people, their next life is not going to be human. But if they chant Hare Krishna, if they get a literature about Krishna, or they eat prasadam, the next birth is human. So for them, that is a big step up, isn't it? Isn't it? So you have to think, what's a success? So the fact that the next birth is at least human is a big success for them. So everybody, we get a book in their hands, everybody who eats prasadam, everybody who hears the holy names. We have some special festivals where we chant the holy names. When do we chant the holy names? Rath Yatra. And just on Plain Street Sankirtan. And next month, what is it that we do? The book marathon. Because then we get lots of books out to lots of people. Where's the capital of book distribution now? Where? Delhi, yes. It used to be Mayapur, but now Delhi is the capital of India, and it's the capital of book distribution. But everywhere we can distribute books. Some people may distribute more than you, some less, but we can engage in this process, and this will help to keep the mind bridled. Because it's easier to keep the mind bridled than to let it go and try to capture it, like that horse that got away. It's easier to keep it bridled than to let it go and try to bring it back and capture it. Because we are reading here that, you know, if we've already been allured, that's why we try to raise people as devotees and start them as brahmacharis from the beginning. Because if you've already been allured, it's easy to be re-allured, isn't it? You have to be extra vigilant not to be, right? You have to be extra careful to remind yourself that you can't be involved in these things, right? Just like you take people, say, let's just take somebody who who never drank alcohol. Now, is it possible that that person is an alcoholic? It is, because it's a bodily predisposition. But if they never drank, it doesn't matter. You might be allergic to beef, but if you don't eat it, it won't bother you, right? So the person, of course, who's had the problem with that or the cigarette, say a person hasn't smoked a cigarette in years and they take one puff, what happens? A physical phenomena happens that they have to have more, and they go buy a pack or a carton or whatever and keep smoking them. So a person who hasn't smoked won't think about it, but that person has to remember that if they've already been alert, it's easy to become re-alert. And that's what many of us have to remember. But of course, if we get free from it, we can become just as good as someone who was never involved in it, right? Because sometimes those people are extra careful to keep their spiritual condition strong. Where sometimes we find there may be some Hindu families where they're born in a mode of goodness, and they worship their deities a little bit, and they have enough money to get by, maybe even extra, but they're not plagued by some addiction or some problem. So sometimes the person who has a problem they have to get away from practice the spiritual life harder because they're begging Krishna for mercy, and they get it. Right? Because they're begging Krishna for the mercy, because they don't want to be re-alert, because it's easier to be re-alert. It's like the story, they even tell it in the Indian stories of the tortoise and the hare, the rabbit. What's a rabbit? A khargosh? A khargosh? And what's a turtle? A what? Kachua. And the rabbit says, oh, I can beat you so easily in the race, I'm going to stop and rest for a while. And the tortoise just keeps going and beats him. So the person that stays strong in spiritual life, even if he has difficulties or allurements to get away from, the fact that he has to turn to Krishna. We look at Draupadi. She was having a big problem when the Kurus were trying to take off her sari. And she did a balance program first. One hand goes to Krishna, one hand holds the sari. This sounds good, doesn't it? This way I'm covered. Part of me is taking care of myself, part of me is surrendering to Krishna. But it kept coming off and she totally gave up to Krishna. So the fact that somebody has been allured before gives them a chance for either bigger success or bigger failure. They're going to fail worse if they go back to it. And if they beg to Krishna for mercy, then Krishna will help them. And they may succeed even more than the person who didn't have these allurements. So then what is the problem that we're facing here? If we learn all this, and we know about keeping the mind bridled, Prabhupada says here, therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail. And what is the first reason he mentions? Does anybody remember? Anybody remember? Sufficiently serious. Now, what does the word serious mean? It means focus. It means that you've considered it carefully. It means you're paying attention. It can also mean sincere, but it also means it's major or vital, right? Like if I say there's a small fire in the other room, if I say there's a serious fire in the other room, what does that mean? It means you need to do something about it. So it means we need to make a serious endeavor, not like some people say, well, I believe in Jesus, that's all I have to do. I don't have to do anything. Or some people told me if they're born in the right family, they don't have to do anything. But is this true? No, we have to make a serious effort. You may be the best runner in all of India, but if you sit here and I walk to Lloyd Bazaar, who gets there first? You do, because you're the best runner. You're so good you don't even have to run, right? You can just sit there and you'll beat me, right? Is it true? No, but do people think this way? They do. That's why they tell the story of the tortoise and the hare, the khargosh and the, what's the tortoise? Kachua. That's why they tell that story. Because if you're constantly endeavoring, even if you have to get through difficulties, you will still get there before the person who's qualified but does nothing about it. So this is something we have to think about, is to become serious. Sufficiently serious about following the process. You know, if I'm chasing you with a gun, do you run fast? These 3 guys ran fast in Delhi years back because what happened was somebody bumped me on the right side. So you know what I did? Without looking, I just grabbed the guy on the left by the throat. And I noticed he was trying to cut my bag. So he started screaming, and he dropped his knife, and he started to run. The guy who bumped me ran, and a 3rd guy ran. So I grabbed the knife, and I'm chasing him, saying, "You forgot your knife, you forgot your knife." They ran very quickly, right? Because they thought it was serious. They thought they were cutting my bag with a knife, and the next thing I'm chasing them with the same knife. They ran away very quickly. They were not ready for that. So they did make good time. In the other time the girl ran quickly is she was in jogging clothes, and she was jogging, and she dropped her keys. So this shows another thing is that sometimes is how we think things are. We think things are not a danger. They may not be a danger. And we think things are a danger and we're afraid of it, even if there's no reason to be afraid. So she dropped her keys and I started to run after her. So she ran a little faster. So I ran a little faster. Then she ran a little faster, then I sped up, and then she ran so fast she got away. But fortunately she had her phone number on the keys because she thought I was chasing her to do some serious problem to her, right? So if something's serious, we have to take a concerted effort, not that, okay, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Okay, I did some chanting now. I'll do some next week. Is that enough? Had a grain of rice today, I'll have another one next week. That's all I need. And it's only quality that's important. We don't have to do a lot, right? One person told me that with chanting. He says, you know, it's only quality that's important. It's not quantity. So I says, oh, I have some of the best prasadam ever. I said, I'll give you a plate of it. He says, really? And I brought out a plate with 1 grain of rice. He says, what's this? I says, this is the best rice ever. He says, don't I get more? I said, well, you told me that quality is important. Is quality important? Is it? Yes, it is, but is it the only thing that's important? No. So he wasn't happy with the grain of rice. Even though it was the best quality rice you could get, he wanted more of it. So if something is good, we should want to do more. Like we think if there's such a thing as too little chanting and too much chanting, if too much chanting is a mistake and too little chanting is a mistake, which mistake do we want to make? Too much, yes. There may be no such thing, but if we have to make a mistake, it's better to do too much, right? If 1 is good, 16 is better, right? That doesn't work with chapatis or cigarettes or many things. Even good things like chapatis, there's a certain limit, but with chanting you can do as much as you want. So this is the thing that we have to reconcile ourselves to be. Are we sufficiently serious about following this process? And some of the things are already laid out for us. There's the 9 processes we talked about, and there's ways to do these processes. We get up in the morning, we get to see the deities. There's 5 ways that we can contact the spiritual world through seemingly material things that become spiritual. There's the deities, there's the holy names, there's the holy places, like where's one? Can you point to a holy place? Here? Is it there? Here? Here? Right here. Yes. Okay, the holy places, the holy names, the transcendental literatures, the deities. What else? Prasadam, association with devotees. So these things are already laid out for us. We don't have to figure it out. You know, some of the religions, they say you just believe in this, but they don't have an exact process to do. So we have to be serious about doing this. This is why we want to make sure to chant them every day. We think, we can think, I tell people chanting is like breathing. They're both important, but you don't have to do them every day, correct? Can you skip a day? With chanting or breathing, which one can you skip a day with? You can't think, well, I've done this for many years now, so one day won't hurt. Is that true? Is that like the Sisupala logic? You know what Sisupala logic is? I got away with insulting Krishna 99 times. One more time won't kill me, right? Is that right? No, it's not right. It did kill him. Because as it's being like the criminals committing crimes, in the meantime, the police are like taking note of it and getting all the evidence. And so when they catch you, you pay for all 100 offenses, right? But Sisupala thought he was getting away with it, and one more wouldn't kill him, but it did, didn't it? So we can't think that as long as I'm getting away with it, I'm doing okay. It just hasn't caught up with me yet. So we have to be serious about following this process, just like those thieves who dropped the knife and I'm chasing with it, they were serious about getting away. Because if they thought a few seconds before they were cutting my bag and stealing from me, and all of a sudden I'd choked one of them and I'm chasing them with a knife, they thought they better get away quickly, right? And I ended up with a knife. So, and the girl was afraid that I was chasing her, even though I was trying to get her keys back. But she took it serious. So we have to take this serious, right? I think, what's another 100 lifetimes in the material world, right? You suffer so much, you don't mind if I hit you a couple times, do you? Right? We don't take seriously how dangerous this material world is. Then you look at some of these auto rickshaws. If the kid looks less than 16 or they look drunk, do you climb in the auto rickshaw? No, because the streets are already dangerous here. You don't need to add to it by someone who doesn't know how to drive and someone who's intoxicated. Correct? So we have to look for things in this world that are a danger. And the main danger is not to follow that process. And we follow it. How are we not following it is because if we're unbridled, the example is given like the horses. The senses are like the horses. And you keep them bridled, you can keep them following the path. But if you're unbridled, can you keep them following the path? Or do they run all over the place? And if they run all over the place, then these next questions have to be answered. That Krishna said in the verse that in the beginning they take to the process, but due to what? Worldly mindedness. We think that there is some sense gratification or some opulence I can enjoy that will be better than Krishna consciousness. Because if I put two items here and you choose one of them, that means you think that one is better, right? Like if I put a 10 rupee note here and a 1,000 rupee note here, which one is worth more? Which one? No, the 10 rupee note is because the 1,000 rupee note was demonetized. So we have to realize something might look valuable and not be valuable. We have to check it carefully, right? But the fact that you picked that 1,000 rupee note means you think it's more because it has more zeros. But what is it? What is 1 0? And what is 2 zeros? And 3 zeros. So the 1,000 rupee note has been demonetized, but it looks like more. So because it looks like more, it must be more valuable, yes? Is it true? No? If I take a bar and paint it gold, but it's not gold, but if I throw a 50-carat diamond in the trash, you might throw out the trash, not realizing that there's something valuable in there. So we have to understand what's actually valuable. That's why part of the idea of serious means we have to consider what it is that we're doing. Like if I say the building's seriously on fire and you take a look and you say, okay, I need to make a serious effort to get out of this building. Well, the material world is like the building on fire. We think I'll hang out a little longer. You know, the building's on fire. Hey, get out quick, the building's on fire. My favorite TV show is not over yet. And since it's your favorite TV show, you should stay and watch it, right? But people act like this. They continue with the material activity instead of following with seriousness. And we see we have so many examples of devotees who are serious. What's a good thing? How can we start the day by being serious? How can we start it by being serious? What? Before that? What? Wake up? Yes, wake up early. So then what about before that? What do we have to do then? We had to go to bed early, right? I mean, I can go to bed. I can go to bed late, and I can wake up early, but I can't do both. Right? So we have to think about, people in the mode of passion or ignorance, they stay out at the bars all night, and they wait until they just completely crash, and then they wake up in the morning. One of my parents' friends, Bob and Bonnie Pollan, they owned the only Cadillac and Oldsmobile agency in Tucson, Arizona, and they had lots of money. And they would stay out drinking late every night. And one day the sun came up, and Bonnie says, "Oh my God, what is that?" And she'd never seen the sun come up before, except that she stayed up until then. But they had lots of money, and they even had a big place in Tucson, Arizona, and they had a place at the Balboa Bay Club, which is near Laguna Beach, but it's like where people go if you have a boat. And they had a boat named after her, the Bonnie High. So you'd think that, her husband takes care of her nicely, and they own a big house in Tucson, Arizona, and they own a place at the Balboa Bay Club with a big yacht there with her name on it, the Bonnie High. You think she's got to be happy, right? Would you figure that? Then why did she commit suicide? Something had to be missing, right? All that going for her, and somehow she committed suicide. Because the trouble is, certain activities make things worse. Like people who take the intoxicants, it makes life worse. Doesn't matter how much money you have, you feel depressed. It's poison in the beginning and poison in the end. And then passion, at least it's pleasure in the beginning, but then it's poison later too. So if you get several poisons at once, she seemed to have all the stuff going for her. And yet she committed suicide. So we see that we have to take serious following the path, because we're doing two things. We're going back to Godhead, and we're saving ourselves from a serious source of misery. It's like if I put a crore of rupees here, and over here I put a trap where you're going to catch your hand in it, right? Or a snake that's going to bite you. Which one would you choose? And you have to get one or the other. That's the thing with this. You either have to accept, we have a free choice. But basically our free choice is to be controlled by Krishna or to be controlled by matter. And people get in more trouble trying to exercise their free choice than they do just turning their life and will over to Krishna. So we must be serious about following this process. And we realize that it works around the mind. And this is why we organize our time. This is why I don't like to chant with a bunch of people and people asking me questions, because the way the brain works is it has a thing called a reticular regulator. So whatever you tell it is important, everything else can wait. So if you're chanting sincerely, then the other things wait. But if you think, oh, well, what about this? Then the brain says, okay, the chanting can go on the back burner now. As I said before, what I do is write down the things I'm going to do later in the day. People say, oh, so you can remember? I said, no, so I can forget about it while I'm chanting, and I don't have to think, what do I have to do at 9 and 10 and 11 and 12? I have it written in the book the day before. So it's okay, the day before I'm going to write in what I have to do during the day. In the beginning, you write Mangal Artik and rounds, and then the other things. That way, you don't have to keep it. Now, what was it I had to do? You think, no, when it's time, I open the book when I'm done with my primary. Put the attention on that first and chant thinking about that only. And then we will be sufficiently serious. Because the problem is we don't think that the goal of Krishna consciousness is quite that good for us. And we don't think the suffering is quite that bad. Other people, and we judge our insides by other people's outsides, because they can do a good job of showing a face of pretending that everything is doing well. Bonnie Pollen looked like she had the world going for her, but the fact that she killed herself indicates that she didn't. So people try to show how great they're doing, and so we judge our inside by how they're presenting themselves. But we have to realize that we need to be sufficiently serious about following this process. We need to drive it not like a leisurely drive, but like a race car driver does. He tries to get to that finish line at all speed, and he has people to help him. If a tire comes off, he has people to come help him put that tire on, don't they? You've seen the shows of the racing cars? They get over, they can change that tire within seconds, right? When something's sufficiently dangerous, you figure out how to get it done quickly. You know, a plane like the 737 or the Airbus A320, if they have to crash land that plane, how long does it take them to clear that plane? Who knows? Somebody give a guess. How long do you think? How long? 5 minutes? Anyone else have an answer? How quick can they clear all the passengers out of that plane? What? 90 seconds. And why? Because they're sufficiently serious about getting it done. They say, well, relax, think about it later. They have a program. Everybody gets up, you go straight to boom, the doors shoot off from the sides, the doors shoot off from the front, the doors shoot off from the back, and they direct everybody to go to those doors and get out. And people are afraid to fly. But you know the statistic? Do you know that walking 1 kilometer on the street here is more dangerous than flying all the way around the world? You know, in America, in 10 years, only 5 people died from commercial aviation. And in this country, they kill 450 people every day with cars. So what people think is dangerous and what is dangerous may not be the same thing. Do you think the rickshaw driver who's driving drunk, you see him, and he's honking the horn instead of using the lights when it's dark, is he not sufficiently educated about the danger? Right? The girl and the rickshaw driver were killed last year because the car ran into it. And they're going to drive with the lights off, impaired. So they're not serious about the sufficiency of the danger of it. Like if I was chasing those guys with a knife, did they run fast? Or did they stop to have a tea? They ran fast, didn't they? They were shocked and they ran fast. So somehow we have to be sufficiently serious that we are running to and we're running away. We're running to Krishna and we're running away from the difficulties. And we do need the Sankhya to add up the cost of value ratio, right? I said, would you rather take 1 crore of rupees or drink boiling ghee? I think, well, let me think about that, right? But yet that's the way we think about material activities. We may not get the effect of it now, but it's like drinking it now and the poison comes later, right? It's still the same effect. So we have to try to become sufficiently serious about this. And by the practice, it gets better. And especially if we pay attention to Krishna's name when we're chanting, then the rest of the day goes good. That's why the day starts with rounds. After the Mangal Arti, we go in to do the rounds. And you know, if we talk to people, it's better to talk later. I love to socialize with people, but not till I've finished my rounds. I like to do that first. You know, we must do the most productive thing at any time. Like right now is to give class. But I wouldn't feel like giving class if I hadn't chanted any rounds. I would be thinking I should be chanting. So first I do the important thing and then move to the next one and take care of that. So this is the goal of this, that to keep the mind bridled, we have to become sufficiently serious about following the path. Because once we let those reins go, it may not be that easy to get those horses back. And we want to keep them on course. Any question or comment? Nothing? So we let the horses run wherever they want to go because we're open-minded? Is that it? No? But do some of us do that anyway? Even after hearing so many instructions on the matter, do we sometimes let the mind go somewhere that causes suffering? At least you should remember how it was before, right? Like, you've probably touched fire before, right? Anybody want to try it now? I put the lighter, you can put your hand on it. It's not going to burn this time. Who wants to try it? Put your hand on it. No one? But do we think this way? Well, maybe next time we'll be okay. And then we get burned again and we're surprised. But we have to remember, if we keep doing the same thing, we'll keep getting the same result. So it should be that we keep doing Krishna consciousness. And try to think, am I serious about following this, or am I just kind of going along with it? And we can always increase it. It's a process, right? It's not like we turn on the light. It's like we develop faith by practice. And practice develops more faith, which makes more practice. And we have to read some of this philosophy, because if we don't read it, we won't know what's in the book. The book doesn't jump off the shelf. Some people say, oh, I was born in India. I know all Bhagavad-Gita. I said, can you name the chapters to me? Well, no. I said, well, how do you know the whole Gita if you don't even know the chapter names? Right? It doesn't work that way. You don't know Gita just by being born in India, do you? There's a chance to read it, but you still have to read it. So that's the key. We have to chant, and we have to read, and we have to try to help other people. Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.